Hey everybody, so we are doing another Country Roads Take Me Home here on July 4th. We're actually going to take a bunch of cool back roads. We just left Old Hanover Presbyterian Churchyard. It's the 1-year anniversary of our channel. So we were there to talk about that, talk about the channel, talk about July 4th. Just talk, which is what I like to do. It's funny, I can sort of go on and on about all this different kind of stuff, but we're going to take a cool bunch of roads not normally taken, go through some little towns, go through areas that are just really pretty little areas, talk about them, talk about some of the history of those towns that we go through, some of the funny stories even that some of these towns have in their naming and that type of stuff. But it'll be another fun relaxing little trip down through the roads rarely taken. Some of these I had taken them on the way over here just to sort of experience whether it's like, okay, is this a good group of roads to take on this trip, and thoroughly enjoyed myself doing that. We're crossing 81 now. We're in the Grantville region. And then we will be turning left. This is coming up to a junction with Route 743. But yeah, it was cool going back. It'd be the third time that we went back to the Old Hanover Presbyterian Churchyard. It is on the Registry of Historic Places for Pennsylvania. It's not on the National Registry, but cool very much nonetheless that it's on Pennsylvania's registry. There was a church there at one point, no longer. That's been gone for a long time. But we're turning left here on Jonestown Road, and we'll follow this through to go through a little town here. And this is the village of Grantville. It's really a cool little town here. You think of Grantville more because of the racetrack and the casino and that type of stuff, and you don't think about it is an actual little village that sits here, and just pretty little town. I hadn't gone through here for a long time. I'm from Greenpoint, which is in the general region. It's maybe about 6 or 7 miles away. But 443 goes through parts of Grantville, and a lot of these that's an old house over there. A lot of old places here, a lot of history. Very neat. And we're going to go by a couple places that we have visited before, and maybe talk about them a little bit again, and that type of stuff. So it's another country drive. Neat little journey. Oh, I hope I didn't hit that birdie. Nope. I think that was like either a catbird or a starling. Starlings are slightly larger, but it sort of had that look. I always joke about, like, I hear these catbirds, and the friend Jim, who I worked for, he always says, like, I've never heard these birds before. It must be somebody haunting you or something. Like, these catbirds just follow you around and just appear out of nowhere, and you start hearing them screaming. So who knows? But a lot of adventures to come, as I talked about in that video. I'm looking forward to a bunch of different things. I gotta start a new series called Folk Tales, because there's a lot of cool different stories, unique stories. A lot of them are from, like, say, the Germanic home country, the Palatine region, that people brought with them to this area. Because I think the book is called Amish Folk Tales. So you have that Germanic, that Dutchy stories that they bring with them, and some of them are pretty folksy and just are what they are, but it's still a cool part of our heritage and our history. A lot of us here in America do have a German heritage. A lot of people came from there, English heritage, and obviously this is the melting pot, so a lot of other cultures as well. But every single one of those cultures has brought stories with them, their own folk tales, and some of them are extraordinarily unique. Some of them are very much alike. I mean, it's at the end of the day, we all are very, very connected and very, very much the same. You know, we have a lot of the same unique perspectives on the world that surrounds us, and you know, you see a lot of the mythologies, even though you'll have them from different cultures, they'll have a lot of similarities in their telling, what they're about, what their founding is from. And it's cool to experience those different things through folk tales. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with that series. I'm really looking forward to the movie theater series, because the more I learn, the first one will be about Lebanon movie theaters, because there's so many of these, the old romantic theaters. And if I had one of my dreams that would be sort of on a bucket list to say this is something I would love to own one of those old time movie theaters from like the 20s, 30s, that still has the balcony and the stage and all that other kind of stuff. It was just, there was a magic to it. It was just, I just love that time period. One of my favorite movies is called The Majestic with Jim Carrey, and they go and fix up this old movie theater, The Majestic, and I just absolutely adore that movie. That's one I can watch over and over and over and over again. And with being a writer and having my first training was in screenwriting, you know, I absolutely adore anything that has to do with the movie eras and that kind of stuff, and with screenwriting and the whole process. There is Zion Evangelical Lutheran Church. That's one of those churches that we visited. The church itself is no longer in existence, but is now used, as Jay had pointed out, it's used now as a wedding venue. So it's nice to see that church still has its existence and is still being used and loved, because a lot of times that doesn't happen, unfortunately. And we are now on Old Route 22. New 22, if you want to call it that, down there, but this is the original Route 22. Jonestown Road goes through a number of really cool towns like Ono, which we'll be coming up to. It goes through Jonestown, which is why it's called Jonestown Road. But we'll tell you some pretty cool stories about Ono. We're going to go through Harper's Tavern. We had done a Country Roads Take Me Home that we started down in Harper's Tavern and then came this way. Harper's Tavern it's a really cool old restaurant and bar. For me, it's a little expensive, but the food is phenomenal and the history is even better. It's actually over 200 years old. Now, it's not the original structure that Adam Harper made. The original one, I think, was back a little further off the road. And this is also the birthplace of, or I believe not birthplace, but Lindley Murray, who is the grammarian, lived here. His father owned a mill that would be on the other side of, I guess, 934. But this is also where this inn is going to be coming up on the right, which has a ton of history. It's also supposedly haunted. Got a lot of really unique things about it. That's, I think, over 200 some years old. Harper's Fort was up behind that along the Swatara, and it was Harper's Fort and then Reed's Fort, which would be probably another 2 miles east of here as we're going towards over the Ono region. And that's the inn right over there. I'd like to visit there at some point, and this is Harper's Tavern. You have the historic marker for Lindley Murray, and then across the river is where you would have Indiantown's historic marker. And John Walter will be coming up on where Ono is where John Walter, who was one of the founders of the Evangelical Association, along with Jacob Albright, is buried in the Mount Nebo Cemetery. And but Harper's Fort, and I don't like to like film people directly on with their vehicles, because sometimes people get upset about that. But anyways, Harper's Fort and Reed's Fort, Cliff and I were actually talking about this yesterday. We went over to Buddy's Log Cabin. We like to go out maybe every couple weeks or something like that, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and go down to Buddy's and go out to eat, talk about life, talk about our channels, that type of stuff. And we were actually talking about it. You would presume, because each of these gaps in the Blue Mountain had a fort that usually was right there at the gap. In this case, we can't find anything historically, maps or any otherwise, that there was. So I would assume that Reed's Fort and Harper's Fort were the ones that sort of in essence guarded that, because the area was called Indian Town, which we did the historic marker on that. All throughout that valley back there were Native American villages, mainly Susquehannock. You had some Lenape or the Delaware Indians, and you had some other tribes as well that were in there. So it was a pretty peaceable area, so the likelihood of Native American raiding parties coming through in the French and Indian War probably weren't as likely with that gap. So it was a much less active gap that had raids coming through, unlike Swatara Gap or Manada Gap. So that'd be my assumption in that regard. I haven't read anything contrary to that. Now we're coming up to the village of Ono. It originally was called, in the 1850s, it was called Mount Nebo, and that's why that cemetery where John Walter is buried is called Mount Nebo Cemetery. It's a biblical name, I believe, from the Old Testament. Maybe one of you can say what that's exactly from, but they eventually named it Ono because there was another Mount Nebo somewhere, I think in Pennsylvania. So a lot of these older towns, they would have a certain name and then they'd have to change it sometimes, just so there wasn't confusion with the post office as things expanded in that regard. But Ono, the funny story that goes through, when they were renaming it, they had a judge that lived in the town and all these other people, and they were given different names. Well, we can name it, you know, Googly Boogly Boogly Boo or whatever, and they would all say, oh no, oh no. And they kept on going through each of these names that somebody would give, and it'd be like, oh no, oh no. And then eventually they're just like, well, let's just name it that, oh no. And that's not the actual, the judge actually is the one that gave the name for Ono. But it's a funny story though too, and this is right here. You'll have the historic marker on the left, and on the right there's a stone that's up right there, and that's where John Walter is buried. That's his memorial stone, and he was the one that came up with the hymnal, and he was the junior of Jacob Albright by about almost 2 decades. But an extremely gifted man, died very, very early in life. Unfortunately, my friend Bob and I were just talking about the history of the Evangelical Association and their contributions, and it's cool that you have a historical figure like that that's buried so close by. This is McGillstown Road. Where McGillstown is, or if it even exists, I have no clue, because there's all these little tiny towns all over the place. We'll be coming up the Heilmandale Road here at some point, and that's an actual town. We've talked about Heilmandale, that was named after the Heilman family, and we visited Hill Lutheran Church there in Cleona, up on the hill, thus the name Hill Lutheran Church. But it's a unique cemetery because there's over, I think there's 142 members of the Heilman family are buried there. They're just everywhere in that cemetery. And like, you'll have a cemetery where here's the Smith family, and there are 8, 9, 10 graves of the Smith family. But this is just completely different. It's just, come on, squirrel, make a decision. But it's unique because there's so many of them buried there. And that's also the Hill Lutheran Church, is where John Casper Stover, who has come up over and over and over and over again with the Lutheran Church of all these different foundings, and we just, the Alt Alaha, or however it's pronounced, he was the founding pastor there as well. And it was just so really, really neat seeing him come up over and over and over again. And the Muhlenberg dynasty as well, they come up in a lot of these different churches as well. But yeah, it's so much cool history. We'll do, I gotta find a location yet, but Heilmandale actually had their own rail station. I believe it was a Reading Railroad station. Where exactly that was located, I don't know, but I think in the intro pictures for Alright, so we're back. The thing fell out on my phone. I didn't realize it because I wasn't paying attention, and the battery basically died. But I was talking about Hallandale. I think the picture of the Hallandale station is actually on the intro outro pictures for that the America's Rail Station series. It has a slightly different spelling, which is sort of odd, but anywho, so here we're going across Ono Road. That road there will take you back to the Ono region. It's a really pretty little area. So this might actually, I'm not sure if this is McGillstown or what it is. I'll have to look on the maps and you know, maybe Jay, I know Jay likes to follow along with Google Maps while I'm driving, and sometimes they have those little town names, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're recognized. Like, it was odd, I was talking to Cliff yesterday, he found that old village of Murray that I thought was no longer in existence, but apparently parts of where Gold Mine Road go back, that's considered part of it is Murray. Maybe Murray was a little more substantial size-wise than I originally thought. But that, I think the main thing is that's where the Murray rail station had been. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of you like, I mean, obviously McGillstown, if there is an actual McGillstown, normally what happened is there's some guy named McGill, and that or the prominent family there in that region, and they named it McGillstown. Sort of like you have Frystown. There must have been a man, his last name was Fry, that founded that village at some point, so it's called Frystown. And same as you have Myerstown. Now the spelling's different from Isaac Myers' actual spelling of his name, but you know, his name Myerstown, or you know, McGillsville, or whatever it would be. And here we're crossing the Swatara Creek. Get a little bit of a view there. Swatara Creek's quite a pretty creek. It used to be sort of dirty coming down through Schuylkill County because of all the coal mining, but they did a lot in the 70s and the 80s to try to correct a lot of that, and really has cleaned up quite nicely. It's just a pretty area. Quittapahilla Creek goes into that, and all the little Swatara Creek are several tributaries, if you will, I guess, that go through and join up with Swatara Creek. It's confusing sometimes where it all goes, but Swatara Creek was one of the main waterways that the Union Canal used. So the Union Canal, probably that part that we just went over, Union Canal would have went through there somewhere. And like I had said in the celebratory anniversary video for the channel that we just did over at Old Hanover Churchyard, the Union Canal Tunnel, we want to go back, we want to get a slightly different viewpoint on it, because we're actually going to go on top of where it goes through, because it actually goes underneath the road, Tunnel Hill Road, and underneath some of those homes and their driveways, and it's pretty neat. But that's where the mules obviously couldn't have gone through the tunnel, only the canal boat could, so they used poles to sort of push through off the walls and, you know, off the bottom of the canal, and then they would have taken the mules like a tow path, but it would have been like the mule path over top of the actual tunnel. So we'll be on top of there, and like I said, there were some placards that weren't there the last time we went through, because we sort of more did it on the Union Canal Tunnel Park than on the actual historic marker that's right there. So we're gonna hit that. We're gonna hit the other placards, maybe go a little more in depth on those, read them a little more closely, and then maybe even as well, depending on how my feet are feeling, go to either end of the tunnel as well. I mean, that way we're not just looking down on them, but we actually go through, and I think that'll be pretty cool as well. Which I'm hoping I didn't, but I think I missed my road that I wanted to turn at because I was talking and was blah blah blahing, and we'll see if that's the case or not. And then if it is, we'll make a quick turny turn and go back to that road, because I want to take you guys back on that road because it's such a neat road. And yeah, I definitely went past it. So we're gonna turn around right here and go back, because that's a neat road, and that'll be the last part of our journey. This is the Lebanon refuse authority, so it's the dump. But yeah, because that road the one that we're about to take, I had never been on it before. And I always find that cool. You know, it's, you know, being in this area, being on all the other roads, never had been on this, you know, these little back roads, if you will, that just sort of go through other little villages and homesteads and that type of stuff. And it's sort of like, it's pretty neat going through there. I had never been through there before, so maybe we'll find out that I'm wrong again, and that turning point is actually back the way nope, right here it is. So we want to make a right here, I believe, or not. We might be going on a brand new road, and I'm not sure if this is actually a road that's going to go through everywhere, or if we have to turn around and I was still going the right direction. But we'll discover that as we go along and figure it out. And if I did go the wrong way, like Bob Ross says, is a happy little accident. Look at it, happy little trees, happy little mistakes. I can't do Bob Ross, sorry, but always fun and relaxing to listen to his videos, watch them. I wish I could paint like he did, because that would be one of those things that I would also really enjoy, having that talent. But unfortunately, I do not. My talent is not shutting up and talking about history and adventures and whatnot. But this is also a pretty little road through here, and we'll see where we end up. But I like that. I like the other road. That was really neat. It's black something, and it goes over to like Mountville Road. But it's a pretty neat little road as well. Like I said, who knows where this one will take us, and we'll go there, and if it ends, we turn around, go back, and then find the other road and go from there. And maybe by chance we actually did take the right road, and it's only named Bolts Lane for so far, and then it turns into the other road, because that does happen as well. Sometimes when you switch townships as well, they have little weirdness, and they can wind out changing the road name or whatever it is. Even the road doesn't actually change, it continues going straight. They still, at some point, it quote unquote changes, and go from there. We're about to find out right here. Let's see where we're at. Oh, it is. This is the right road. It is. It's one of those things where the township changes and the road name winds out changing as well. That's exactly what it is. It's Black Oak Road, and then it turns into Bolts Lane. So, yeah, that was weird. I didn't see that on the way through, but anyhow, so There's another cool little country roads take me home. We learn a little bit of stuff, have a little bit of fun, enjoy a pleasant drive through the country here on July 4th, our Independence Day here in America. And as always, I want to say thank you, and thanks for coming along. Another adventure, learning maybe a little bit of hometown history about a couple of these different towns, and had some fun along the way. So thanks once again for coming along, and we will see you all about town.